Question 1. The review process indicates that the current cloud resource provisioning workflow is experiencing significant delays, impacting project timelines. The team is under pressure to optimize this process rapidly. Which of the following approaches would best align with professional architectural best practices for process optimization within an IBM cloud environment? Option A. Eliminate all manual validation steps in the current provisioning workflow to accelerate the process, without assessing the impact on security or compliance. Option B. Conduct a detailed analysis of current provisioning metrics, identify specific bottlenecks through stakeholder interviews and process mapping, and then design targeted automation or procedural improvements based on this data. Option C. Prioritize the fastest possible implementation of any proposed change, even if it means skipping detailed analysis or testing, to demonstrate immediate progress. Option D. Immediately deploy a comprehensive, off-the-shelf automation tool to replace the entire manual provisioning process, assuming it will inherently improve efficiency. Correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed analysis of current provisioning metrics, identify specific bottlenecks through stakeholder interviews and process mapping, and then design targeted automation or procedural improvements based on this data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost reduction with the long-term implications of process efficiency and compliance. The architect must navigate potential trade-offs between speed of implementation and the thoroughness of analysis, which can impact operational stability and adherence to IBM's best practices for cloud architecture. The pressure to demonstrate quick wins can sometimes lead to overlooking critical dependencies or potential risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and data-driven evaluation of existing processes before implementing changes. This aligns with IBM's emphasis on robust architectural design and continuous improvement. By identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies through metrics and stakeholder feedback, the architect ensures that proposed optimizations are targeted, effective, and sustainable. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of introducing new problems while addressing existing ones, thereby upholding the integrity and performance of the cloud environment. It also implicitly supports adherence to any relevant IBM cloud governance frameworks that mandate performance monitoring and optimization. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, untested automation solution without a thorough understanding of current workflows is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It risks introducing unintended consequences, such as data integrity issues or security vulnerabilities, which could violate IBM's internal policies and potentially external compliance requirements if sensitive data is involved. Furthermore, bypassing stakeholder consultation can lead to solutions that are not fit for purpose, causing operational disruption and eroding trust. Focusing solely on cost reduction by eliminating established manual checks without a comprehensive risk assessment is professionally unsound. This approach disregards the potential impact on compliance and auditability. Manual checks often serve as critical control points for regulatory adherence or data security. Their removal without adequate replacement or justification could lead to noncompliance with industry standards or internal governance, posing a significant ethical and regulatory risk. Adopting a move fast and break things mentality, while sometimes applicable in early-stage development, is inappropriate for optimizing established cloud processes. This approach prioritizes speed over stability and control, which is antithetical to the principles of professional cloud architecture. It increases the likelihood of errors, system failures, and security breaches, potentially leading to reputational damage and financial losses, and failing to meet the expected standards of a professional architect. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured problem-solving framework. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant data and metrics, analyzing root causes, developing potential solutions, evaluating these solutions against defined criteria, including cost, risk, and compliance, implementing the chosen solution, and then monitoring its effectiveness. Stakeholder engagement and adherence to established governance and best practices are paramount throughout this process. Question 2. The analysis reveals that a financial services client is seeking to optimize their core transaction processing system hosted on IBM Cloud to improve performance and reduce operational costs. The client operates under strict U.S. financial regulations, including those related to data integrity, auditability, and customer data protection. Which approach best balances the client's objectives with their regulatory obligations? Option A. Focus exclusively on identifying and eliminating redundant processes and infrastructure components to achieve maximum cost savings, deferring any security or compliance reviews until after the optimization is complete. Option B. Prioritize the fastest and most cost-effective optimization techniques, such as a direct lift and shift of the current application architecture to a more cost-efficient IBM cloud service tier, assuming existing controls will suffice. Option C. Implement performance enhancements and cost-saving measures immediately to demonstrate rapid value, with a plan to address any potential compliance gaps retroactively through post-implementation audits. Option D. Conduct a detailed impact assessment of proposed optimizations on existing security controls and data privacy measures, leveraging IBM Cloud's native security and compliance tools, and engage legal and compliance teams throughout the process. The correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed impact assessment of proposed optimizations on existing security controls and data privacy measures, leveraging IBM Cloud's native security and compliance tools, and engage legal and compliance teams throughout the process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, optimizing existing processes for efficiency and cost-effectiveness within a regulated environment. The professional architect must balance the technical feasibility of process optimization with the stringent requirements of data governance, security, and compliance, particularly within the context of IBM cloud services. The challenge lies in identifying optimization strategies that not only improve performance, but also adhere to the specific regulatory framework governing the client's industry, which is assumed to be US-based for this exam context, implying adherence to regulations like HIPAA, GDPR, if applicable to US operations, and relevant financial industry regulations, e.g., SOX. Misinterpreting or overlooking these regulatory nuances can lead to significant compliance breaches, data security incidents, and financial penalties. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, risk-aware methodology that prioritizes compliance and security throughout the optimization lifecycle. This includes conducting a thorough impact assessment of any proposed changes on existing security controls and data privacy measures, leveraging IBM Cloud's native security and compliance tools, such as IBM Cloud Security and Compliance Center, to continuously monitor adherence to regulatory standards is paramount. Furthermore, engaging with legal and compliance teams early and often ensures that all optimization efforts align with the defined regulatory framework. This proactive, integrated approach minimizes the risk of introducing vulnerabilities or noncompliance, thereby representing best professional practice by safeguarding the client's sensitive data and business operations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing optimization without a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This approach disregards the fundamental principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are mandated by many U.S. regulations. It risks exposing sensitive data or creating systems that are not compliant with data residency, access control, or audit trail requirements. Focusing solely on cost reduction without considering the security and compliance implications is another critical failure. While cost optimization is a valid goal, it cannot come at the expense of regulatory adherence. Many regulations impose strict requirements on data handling and security that may incur costs, and bypassing these for savings is a direct violation. Adopting a lift and shift approach for all processes without re-evaluating their suitability for the cloud environment from a compliance perspective is also problematic. While seemingly efficient, it may perpetuate existing inefficiencies or, more importantly, fail to address cloud-specific security and compliance requirements that differ from on-premises environments. This can lead to misconfigurations that create compliance gaps. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to process optimization in a regulated cloud environment. This begins with a thorough understanding of the client's business objectives, current processes, and, most importantly, the applicable regulatory landscape. A risk assessment should then be performed to identify potential compliance and security implications of proposed optimizations. Solutions should be designed with security and compliance as core requirements, not afterthoughts. Continuous monitoring and auditing using IBM Cloud's integrated tools are essential to ensure ongoing adherence. Collaboration with legal, compliance, and security teams throughout the project lifecycle is non-negotiable. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that current batch processing workloads are experiencing significant latency and incurring high operational costs. As an IBM Cloud professional architect, you are tasked with optimizing these processes. Considering the need for strict adherence to data privacy regulations and auditability requirements, which of the following approaches would best achieve process optimization while maintaining compliance? Option A. Migrate all batch processing to a cluster of low-cost, unmanaged virtual machines to reduce infrastructure expenses, accepting a higher degree of manual operational oversight. Option B. Adopt a proprietary, end-to-end managed batch processing solution from a single vendor, prioritizing rapid deployment over an independent assessment of data portability and long-term compliance implications. Option C. Replatform all monolithic batch applications into containerized environments without a specific strategy for managing persistent data or ensuring granular access controls for sensitive information. Option D. Implement a phased migration of stateless batch processing components to serverless functions, leveraging managed services for data ingestion and transformation, and ensuring robust logging and auditing capabilities are enabled. The correct answer is D. Implement a phased migration of stateless batch processing components to serverless functions, leveraging managed services for data ingestion and transformation, and ensuring robust logging and auditing capabilities are enabled. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, optimizing existing processes for efficiency and cost-effectiveness without compromising compliance or security. The architect must balance the benefits of modern cloud-native approaches with the established operational procedures and the regulatory landscape governing data handling and service delivery. The challenge lies in identifying the most impactful optimization strategy that aligns with both business objectives and the strict requirements of the C1000-172 exam's implied jurisdiction, which, for the purpose of this exam, we will assume aligns with general U.S. federal regulations concerning data privacy and cloud service provision, such as HIPAA for healthcare data or PCI DSS for payment card data. If applicable to the context of the services being architected, the architect needs to consider not just technical feasibility, but also the implications for data governance, auditability, and potential vendor lock-in. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased migration to serverless computing for specific, stateless workloads. This represents best professional practice because serverless architectures inherently offer scalability, reduced operational overhead, and a pay-per-use model, directly addressing process optimization goals. From a regulatory perspective, serverless platforms often provide robust security features and compliance certifications, e.g., SOC 2, ISO 27001, that can simplify adherence to data protection mandates. By focusing on stateless workloads, the architect minimizes the complexity of state management and data persistence, which are critical for maintaining data integrity and audit trails required by regulations. This approach allows for incremental adoption, enabling thorough testing and validation at each stage, thus mitigating risks and ensuring continued compliance. The inherent elasticity of serverless also supports dynamic scaling, aligning with efficiency and cost optimization. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately re-platform all monolithic applications to containers without a clear strategy for state management or data partitioning. This could lead to significant compliance risks if sensitive data is not handled appropriately within the containerized environment, potentially violating data segregation requirements or auditability standards. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on infrastructure cost reduction by migrating to cheaper, unmanaged virtual machines, without considering the increased operational burden and potential security gaps. This neglects the regulatory requirement for robust security controls and diligent operational management of systems handling regulated data. Finally, an approach that prioritizes vendor-specific proprietary services without evaluating their long-term implications for data portability and compliance could create future challenges in meeting regulatory obligations or migrating away from a vendor, leading to potential lock-in and increased risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach process optimization by first conducting a thorough assessment of existing processes, identifying bottlenecks and areas for improvement. This assessment should include a deep understanding of the regulatory requirements applicable to the data and services being processed. The next step is to evaluate potential cloud-native solutions, prioritizing those that offer demonstrable improvements in efficiency, scalability, and security, while also aligning with compliance mandates. A phased, risk-based approach to migration and implementation is crucial, allowing for continuous monitoring and validation. Architects must also consider the total cost of ownership, including operational overhead and potential vendor lock-in, when making strategic decisions. Collaboration with security, compliance, and business stakeholders is essential throughout the process to ensure all requirements are met. Question 4. The audit findings indicate a potential deficiency in the organization's multi-cloud data governance strategy, specifically regarding the consistent application of data protection controls across disparate cloud environments. As the lead architect, what is the most appropriate course of action to address these findings and ensure ongoing compliance with relevant data privacy regulations? Option A. Prioritize cost optimization initiatives within the multi-cloud environment, addressing data governance concerns only if they directly impact immediate operational costs. Option B. Rely on the native security and compliance features provided by each individual cloud service provider, assuming their offerings are sufficient to meet the organization's overall data protection obligations. Option C. Defer the implementation of enhanced data governance measures until closer to the next major regulatory reporting deadline to minimize immediate resource allocation. Option D. Develop and implement a unified cross-cloud data governance framework that defines clear policies for data classification, encryption, access management, and data lifecycle management, ensuring consistent enforcement across all cloud platforms. The correct answer is D. Develop and implement a unified cross-cloud data governance framework that defines clear policies for data classification, encryption, access management, and data lifecycle management, ensuring consistent enforcement across all cloud platforms. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential gap in the organization's cloud governance framework, specifically concerning the management of sensitive data in a multi-cloud environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the architect to balance the benefits of multi-cloud adoption with the stringent regulatory requirements for data protection and privacy. The architect must consider the specific data residency, sovereignty, and compliance obligations applicable to the organization's operations and the types of data being processed. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the audit findings by proposing a comprehensive data governance strategy that aligns with regulatory mandates. This involves establishing clear policies for data classification, encryption, access control, and data lifecycle management across all cloud platforms. By prioritizing a unified governance model, the architect ensures consistent application of controls, thereby mitigating risks of non-compliance and data breaches. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and professional responsibility to protect sensitive information as mandated by relevant data protection regulations. An incorrect approach that proposes to address the audit findings by solely relying on the native security features of each individual cloud provider is professionally unacceptable. This approach fails to account for the potential inconsistencies in security postures and compliance certifications across different providers. It creates a fragmented governance model, increasing the risk of oversight and making it difficult to demonstrate a unified compliance posture to regulators. This could lead to regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach that suggests deferring the implementation of enhanced data governance until a specific regulatory deadline is also professionally unsound. This reactive stance ignores the proactive nature of risk management and compliance. It exposes the organization to potential violations during the interim period, which can have severe consequences. Best practice dictates a proactive approach to compliance, anticipating regulatory changes and implementing controls in advance. Finally, an approach that focuses on optimizing cloud spend without adequately addressing the data governance gaps is professionally negligent. While cost optimization is important, it must not come at the expense of regulatory compliance and data security. Prioritizing cost savings over the protection of sensitive data is a direct violation of professional ethics and regulatory obligations. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape, a comprehensive assessment of the organization's data assets and their sensitivity, and a risk-based approach to cloud architecture design. Architects must engage with legal, compliance, and business stakeholders to ensure that the proposed solutions meet both technical and regulatory requirements. A continuous monitoring and auditing process is also crucial to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory changes. Question 5. During the evaluation of a critical business application's migration to IBM Cloud, the finance department is pushing for immediate and aggressive cost reduction, while the operations team is concerned about maintaining existing performance levels and avoiding any service disruptions. The application is known to have performance-sensitive components that are crucial for revenue generation. What is the most professional and responsible approach to this migration scenario? Option A. Focus exclusively on cost reduction by migrating all components to the cheapest IBM cloud services, assuming that performance will naturally improve or can be addressed post-migration through ad hoc adjustments. Option B. Implement a phased migration strategy, prioritizing the migration of performance-critical components first to IBM Cloud, while maintaining the existing on-premises infrastructure for less critical components. Subsequently, leverage IBM Cloud's auto-scaling and performance monitoring tools to optimize the migrated components, and then migrate remaining components based on a thorough performance and cost-benefit analysis. Option C. Migrate only the least critical components of the application to IBM Cloud, and indefinitely postpone the migration of the performance-sensitive components due to the perceived risks and cost implications, while continuing to operate them on premises. Option D. Execute a lift and shift migration of all application components to the lowest cost IBM Cloud services available, without conducting detailed performance analysis prior to migration, to achieve maximum immediate cost savings. The correct answer is B. Implement a phased migration strategy, prioritizing the migration of performance-critical components first to IBM Cloud, while maintaining the existing on-premises infrastructure for less critical components. Subsequently, leverage IBM Cloud's auto-scaling and performance monitoring tools to optimize the migrated components, and then migrate remaining components based on a thorough performance and cost-benefit analysis. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, where a critical business application's performance is directly tied to its underlying infrastructure. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for cost optimization with the imperative to maintain service level agreements, SLAs, and avoid potential revenue loss due to performance degradation. Stakeholders, particularly finance, often prioritize cost reduction, while operations and business units focus on performance and availability. The architect must navigate these competing interests, ensuring that technical decisions align with business objectives and regulatory compliance without compromising the application's integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased migration strategy that prioritizes performance-critical components and leverages IBM Cloud's capabilities for gradual optimization. This aligns with best practices for cloud adoption, minimizing disruption and risk. Specifically, identifying and migrating the most performance-sensitive parts of the application first, while maintaining the existing on-premises infrastructure for less critical components, allows for controlled testing and validation. Subsequently, leveraging IBM Cloud's auto-scaling and performance monitoring tools, and then migrating remaining components based on performance and cost-benefit analysis ensures that the transition is smooth and that the application meets its SLAs. This approach demonstrates due diligence, risk management, and a commitment to business continuity, all of which are implicitly or explicitly supported by general IT governance principles and the need to adhere to service delivery standards, which are foundational to responsible cloud architecture. Incorrect approaches analysis. A lift and shift migration without prior performance analysis or optimization is a regulatory and ethical failure because it disregards the potential for performance degradation, which could lead to breaches of SLAs and contractual obligations. This directly impacts the business's ability to operate and potentially its compliance with industry-specific regulations that mandate service availability. It also demonstrates a lack of professional due diligence in assessing the impact of the migration on business operations, focusing solely on cost reduction by migrating all components to the lowest-cost IBM cloud services without considering performance requirements is also a significant failure. This approach ignores the fundamental responsibility of an architect to ensure that the proposed solution meets functional and non-functional requirements, including performance and availability. Such a decision could lead to application unresponsiveness, data corruption, or service outages, resulting in financial losses, reputational damage, and potential regulatory penalties if the application supports regulated activities. It represents a failure to act in the best interest of the business and its stakeholders, migrating only the least critical components to IBM Cloud and delaying the migration of performance-sensitive parts indefinitely, while continuing to incur on-premises costs, is inefficient and fails to realize the full benefits of cloud adoption. While not as immediately catastrophic as the other incorrect approaches, it represents a failure in strategic planning and execution. It demonstrates an inability to effectively manage the cloud migration project, potentially leading to prolonged operational inefficiencies and missed opportunities for innovation and cost savings. This can be seen as a failure to provide sound architectural advice and to manage project timelines effectively, which are core professional responsibilities. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, phased approach to cloud migration. This involves thorough assessment of current application performance, identification of critical dependencies, and a clear understanding of business objectives and SLAs. Stakeholder engagement is paramount to align expectations and secure buy-in for the chosen strategy. The decision-making process should prioritize minimizing business disruption, ensuring application resilience, and achieving demonstrable ROI, all while adhering to any applicable industry-specific governance or compliance frameworks. Continuous monitoring and iterative optimization are key to long-term success in the cloud. Question 6. The assessment process reveals that a new financial services application designed to process sensitive customer financial data will be deployed on IBM Cloud. The architecture team has proposed a solution that leverages various IBM cloud services for scalability and performance. However, there is a debate regarding the extent to which the architect must actively implement and configure data protection controls beyond the default settings of these services to meet U.S. regulatory compliance standards for financial data. Which of the following approaches best represents the professional responsibility of the IBM Cloud professional architect in this scenario? Option A. The architect can rely primarily on the inherent security features provided by IBM Cloud services, assuming that the provider's compliance certifications automatically cover the specific data processing activities of the application. Option B. The architect must proactively identify sensitive data elements, classify them, and implement specific IBM Cloud security configurations, e.g., encryption, access controls, logging tailored to the data's sensitivity and relevant U.S. financial regulations, ensuring these controls are validated and continuously monitored. Option C. The architect should implement a generic set of security controls across all IBM Cloud services used, without a detailed analysis of the specific data types or the nuances of U.S. financial regulations, to ensure a broad but less targeted protection. Option D. The architect should focus solely on the application's functional requirements and performance, deferring detailed data protection implementation to the operations team after deployment, with minimal architectural oversight. The correct answer is B. The architect must proactively identify sensitive data elements, classify them, and implement specific IBM Cloud security configurations, e.g., encryption, access controls, logging, tailored to the data's sensitivity and relevant U.S. financial regulations, ensuring these controls are validated and continuously monitored. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in cloud architecture, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with the imperative of adhering to stringent data privacy regulations. In the context of the C1000-172 IBM Cloud Professional Architect V6 exam, this often translates to understanding how to architect solutions that comply with relevant data protection laws, such as GDPR if the jurisdiction were European, or HIPAA if dealing with health data in the U.S. For this exam, we will assume a US-centric regulatory environment, focusing on principles applicable to data protection and security within that framework. The professionally challenging aspect lies in the inherent tension between agility and compliance. Architects must design systems that are not only performant and scalable, but also demonstrably secure and compliant with legal mandates. Failure to do so can result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The architect's role is to proactively embed compliance into the design from the outset, rather than treating it as an afterthought. This requires a deep understanding of the specific regulatory requirements, the capabilities of the chosen cloud services, and the potential risks associated with data handling. The correct approach involves a proactive, risk-based strategy that prioritizes data protection by design and by default. This means identifying sensitive data, classifying it, and implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect it throughout its lifecycle. It involves leveraging IBM cloud services' built-in security and compliance features, such as encryption, access controls, and audit logging, and configuring them correctly. Furthermore, it necessitates ongoing monitoring and regular review to ensure continued compliance as the solution evolves and regulatory landscapes change. This approach aligns with the ethical obligation to protect user data and the professional responsibility to deliver secure and compliant solutions. An incorrect approach would be to assume that the cloud provider's inherent security is sufficient without specific configuration or validation. This overlooks the shared responsibility model and the architect's duty to implement controls tailored to the specific data being processed and the regulatory context. Another incorrect approach is to delay compliance considerations until after deployment, leading to costly re-architecting and potential breaches. This demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to integrate compliance into the core design principles, which is a significant ethical and professional failing. Finally, a purely technical solution without considering the legal and business implications of data handling would also be flawed, as it fails to address the broader compliance requirements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the data and the business. 2. Conducting a thorough data classification and risk assessment. 3. Designing the solution with data protection principles embedded from the start, leveraging cloud-native security features. 4. Implementing robust access controls, encryption, and audit trails. 5. Establishing processes for ongoing monitoring, incident response, and regular compliance reviews. 6. Engaging with legal and compliance teams to ensure alignment. Question 7. Operational review demonstrates that a critical customer-facing application hosted on IBM Cloud is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting user experience and potentially revenue. The application architecture is complex, and the exact root cause is not immediately apparent. The business unit is demanding an immediate resolution, while the finance department is concerned about potential cost increases associated with performance enhancements. The IT operations team is stretched thin with existing maintenance tasks. What is the most appropriate approach for the IBM Cloud professional architect to take in addressing this situation? Option A. Implement a series of rapid, ad hoc configuration changes to the application and its IBM Cloud environment, prioritizing speed of deployment over formal change control and security validation. Option B. Immediately provision additional compute and storage resources for the application to alleviate the performance issues, deferring a detailed root cause analysis until after the immediate problem is resolved. Option C. Recommend a complete re-architecture of the application using a different IBM Cloud service offering, even if the current architecture is largely compliant with existing standards, to achieve a significant performance uplift. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive performance analysis of the application and its underlying IBM Cloud infrastructure, engaging with business and finance stakeholders to understand their priorities and constraints, and then propose a phased remediation plan that balances performance, cost, and long-term architectural integrity. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive performance analysis of the application and its underlying IBM Cloud infrastructure, engaging with business and finance stakeholders to understand their priorities and constraints, and then propose a phased remediation plan that balances performance, cost, and long-term architectural integrity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, where a critical business application's performance is degrading due to underlying infrastructure limitations. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for performance improvement with the long-term strategic goals of cost optimization and adherence to IBM Cloud's best practices. The architect must consider not only technical solutions, but also the impact on different stakeholders, including the business unit relying on the application, the finance department concerned with costs, and the operations team responsible for maintenance. The pressure to resolve the performance issue quickly without introducing new risks or violating compliance mandates adds to the complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment that considers both immediate performance needs and long-term strategic objectives. This includes evaluating the application's architecture, identifying bottlenecks, and exploring various IBM cloud services that can address these issues. Crucially, it involves engaging with stakeholders to understand their priorities and constraints. For instance, if the application is business critical, a solution that prioritizes performance and availability, even at a slightly higher cost, might be justified. This approach aligns with professional best practices by ensuring that technical decisions are informed by business requirements and strategic goals, leading to a sustainable and effective solution. It also implicitly adheres to IBM Cloud's architectural principles, which emphasize scalability, resilience, and cost-effectiveness. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that solely focuses on immediate performance gains by over-provisioning resources without a thorough analysis of the root cause, is professionally unsound. This can lead to significant cost overruns, violating financial governance, and potentially contravening IBM Cloud's cost management guidelines. Fails to address the underlying architectural issues and can create a false sense of security while masking deeper problems. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a quick fix that bypasses standard change management and security protocols. This poses a significant regulatory and ethical risk, as it could introduce vulnerabilities, compromise data integrity, or violate compliance requirements related to system changes and security audits. Such actions undermine the organization's security posture and could lead to breaches or non-compliance penalties. A third incorrect approach is to recommend a solution that is technically feasible but significantly deviates from the organization's long-term cloud strategy or IBM Cloud best practices without strong justification. This could lead to increased technical debt, integration challenges with other systems, and difficulties in future maintenance and upgrades, ultimately hindering the organization's ability to leverage the full benefits of the cloud platform. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the problem and its business impact. This involves gathering requirements from all relevant stakeholders, performing a thorough technical assessment, and evaluating potential solutions against a set of criteria that includes performance, cost, security, compliance, and alignment with strategic goals. When faced with performance issues, the process should involve root cause analysis, followed by the exploration of multiple remediation options. Each option should be assessed for its trade-offs, and the recommended solution should be presented with a clear justification that addresses the concerns of all stakeholders and adheres to relevant governance frameworks and IBM Cloud best practices. Question 8. Regulatory review indicates that the client's existing data governance policies, which were developed for a traditional on-premises infrastructure, must be meticulously applied to a new IBM Cloud solution. The architect is tasked with ensuring that sensitive customer data remains protected and auditable according to these established policies, while also leveraging the benefits of cloud computing. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations and professional best practices for adapting these policies to the IBM Cloud environment? Option A. Replicate the client's on-premises data governance controls as closely as possible within the IBM Cloud environment, using virtualized security appliances and replicating existing network segmentation strategies. Option B. Implement a comprehensive data governance framework within IBM Cloud that maps existing policy requirements to IBM Cloud's native security and compliance services, utilizing services like IAM, Key Protect, and Activity Tracker, and engaging with client compliance teams to validate the implementation. Option C. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the IBM Cloud solution and address data governance policy compliance in a post-migration phase to avoid delaying the project timeline. Option D. Assume that IBM Cloud's default security configurations are sufficient to meet the client's data governance policies and proceed with the migration without extensive policy mapping. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive data governance framework within IBM Cloud that maps existing policy requirements to IBM Cloud's native security and compliance services, utilizing services like IAM, Key Protect, and Activity Tracker, and engaging with client compliance teams to validate the implementation. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture where a client's existing on-premises data governance policies, designed for a traditional environment, must be adapted to a cloud-native IBM cloud solution. The core challenge lies in translating the intent and spirit of these regulations into effective cloud controls without hindering innovation or introducing unnecessary complexity. The architect must balance compliance requirements with the agility and scalability benefits of cloud computing, ensuring that sensitive data remains protected and auditable in the new environment. Misinterpreting or inadequately applying these policies can lead to significant compliance risks, data breaches, and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the client's specific data governance policies and their underlying regulatory drivers. This necessitates a collaborative effort with the client's legal, compliance, and IT security teams to map existing controls to equivalent or enhanced controls within IBM Cloud. This includes leveraging IBM Cloud's native security services, e.g., IAM, Key Protect, Activity Tracker, Security and Compliance Center, and architectural patterns, e.g., data segmentation, encryption at rest and in transit, to meet or exceed the stipulated governance requirements. The focus is on achieving the desired compliance outcome through cloud-native mechanisms, ensuring that the solution is not only compliant, but also resilient, scalable, and cost-effective. This proactive and integrated approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing a deep understanding of the client's context and regulatory obligations, and by designing a solution that is inherently compliant. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to simply replicate on-premises security controls in the cloud without considering the nuances of the cloud environment. This often leads to inefficient, costly, and potentially less secure solutions. For example, attempting to deploy a virtualized firewall appliance that mimics an on-premises setup might not leverage the full capabilities of IBM Cloud's network security services, failing to meet the agility and scalability benefits of the cloud. This approach risks regulatory noncompliance if the replicated controls are not effectively implemented or monitored in the cloud context. Another incorrect approach is to assume that cloud services inherently provide all necessary compliance. While IBM Cloud offers robust security features, they must be configured and managed correctly to meet specific regulatory mandates. Relying solely on default configurations without a detailed review against the client's data governance policies would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure, potentially leaving sensitive data exposed or unmanaged according to the client's legal obligations. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of deployment over thorough compliance mapping. This might involve making assumptions about data classification or access controls without explicit validation from the client's compliance stakeholders. Such haste can lead to overlooking critical regulatory requirements, resulting in noncompliance and potential legal repercussions for both the client and the architect. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, collaborative, and iterative approach. Begin by thoroughly understanding the client's regulatory landscape and data governance policies. Engage all relevant stakeholders early and often. Map existing controls to IBM Cloud capabilities, identifying gaps and proposing solutions that leverage cloud-native features. Document all decisions and justifications, ensuring transparency and auditability. Continuously review and adapt the architecture as regulations evolve or client requirements change. This systematic process ensures that compliance is embedded into the design from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire to accelerate the launch of a new customer-facing application that processes sensitive personal data. While the development team is eager to deploy quickly, Concerns have been raised about ensuring the application adheres to all relevant data privacy regulations and industry-specific compliance standards before it goes live. The architect is tasked with defining the approach to security and compliance for this new application. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for rapid deployment with robust security and compliance? Option A. Prioritize the stakeholders' demand for speed above all else, launching the application as quickly as possible and addressing any security or compliance issues that may arise post-deployment. Option B. Defer detailed security and compliance reviews until after the application has been deployed to production, focusing solely on meeting the immediate functional requirements for launch. Option C. Integrate security and compliance reviews and controls into the application development lifecycle from the initial design phase, involving legal and compliance teams early to identify and address potential regulatory gaps proactively. Option D. Implement only the minimum technical security controls deemed necessary for basic operation, without a comprehensive assessment of the broader regulatory landscape or potential future compliance requirements. The correct answer is C. Integrate security and compliance reviews and controls into the application development lifecycle from the initial design phase, involving legal and compliance teams early to identify and address potential regulatory gaps proactively. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, where the need for rapid deployment and feature iteration clashes with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. Stakeholders, driven by business objectives, may prioritize speed over thorough risk assessment, creating a tension that requires careful navigation. The professional architect must balance innovation with the responsibility to protect sensitive data and adhere to regulatory mandates, which can be complex and evolving. The challenge lies in translating abstract compliance requirements into concrete architectural decisions and communicating the implications of trade-offs effectively to diverse stakeholders. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a proactive, risk-based security and compliance strategy integrated into the solution design from the outset. This aligns with the principles of security by design and compliance by design, which are fundamental to responsible cloud architecture. By engaging with legal and compliance teams early, the architect ensures that potential regulatory pitfalls are identified and addressed before they become costly issues. This approach demonstrates due diligence, a key ethical and professional obligation, and mitigates the risk of noncompliance, which can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and legal repercussions. It also fosters trust with stakeholders by showing a commitment to both business goals and responsible governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that defers security and compliance reviews until after deployment is professionally unacceptable. This creates a significant regulatory and ethical failure by introducing unnecessary risk. It violates the principle of due diligence, as it fails to proactively identify and mitigate potential compliance gaps. This can lead to violations of data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on jurisdiction, industry-specific compliance standards, e.g., HIPAA, PCI DSS, and internal governance policies. The ethical failure lies in knowingly exposing the organization and its customers to potential harm and legal liabilities. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on meeting the minimum technical requirements without considering the broader regulatory landscape or potential future changes, is also professionally deficient. While technically sound, it lacks foresight and a comprehensive understanding of the operational and legal context. This can lead to a solution that is compliant today, but becomes non-compliant as regulations evolve or as the scope of data processing changes. The ethical failure here is a lack of professional responsibility to anticipate and plan for long-term adherence, potentially leading to future compliance breaches and the associated consequences. An approach that prioritizes stakeholder demands for speed above all else, without adequate risk assessment or consultation with compliance experts, is a direct abdication of professional responsibility. This can result in the deployment of solutions that are inherently insecure or non-compliant, exposing the organization to severe regulatory penalties, data breaches, and loss of customer trust. The ethical failure is a clear disregard for the organization's legal obligations and the protection of sensitive information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of business objectives and stakeholder needs. This must be immediately followed by a comprehensive assessment of the regulatory and compliance landscape relevant to the proposed solution and the data it will handle. Engaging legal and compliance subject matter experts early and continuously throughout the design and implementation phases is crucial. Architects should employ risk management frameworks to identify, assess, and mitigate potential compliance issues. When trade-offs are necessary, they must be made transparently, with a clear understanding of the associated risks and a documented rationale. Continuous monitoring and adaptation to evolving regulatory requirements are also essential components of professional practice in cloud architecture. Question 10. Market research demonstrates that a significant portion of the financial services sector is migrating critical workloads to public cloud environments to enhance agility and reduce operational costs. An IBM cloud professional architect is tasked with designing a new cloud-native application for a US-based financial institution that will process sensitive customer financial data. The architect must ensure the design adheres to all relevant US federal and state regulations governing data privacy, security, and financial services operations, including but not limited to the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, and relevant state data breach notification laws. The primary objective is to create an architecture that is both innovative and demonstrably compliant, minimizing regulatory risk. Which architectural approach best balances innovation with regulatory compliance for this scenario? Option A. Focus on achieving the lowest possible infrastructure costs by selecting the most economical cloud services, assuming that standard cloud provider security measures will inherently satisfy all regulatory requirements. Option B. Implement a comprehensive data governance framework from the initial design phase, incorporating encryption, granular access controls, audit logging, and data residency controls, and proactively consult with legal and compliance experts throughout the development lifecycle to ensure adherence to GLBA and state-specific regulations. Option C. Design the application using the latest cloud-native services for maximum performance and scalability, and then engage legal and compliance teams to identify and address any regulatory gaps post-deployment. Option D. Prioritize the use of open-source technologies and readily available cloud services to minimize licensing costs, deferring detailed regulatory compliance reviews until the application is nearing its production launch. Correct answer is C. Design the application using the latest cloud-native services for maximum performance and scalability, and then engage legal and compliance teams to identify and address any regulatory gaps post-deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid innovation and the need for robust governance and compliance within a regulated industry. The architect must balance the business imperative to leverage new cloud capabilities for competitive advantage against the stringent requirements of data privacy, security, and operational resilience mandated by the relevant regulatory framework. The challenge lies in translating abstract regulatory principles into concrete architectural decisions that are both effective and auditable. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive, risk-based strategy aligned with the principles of privacy by design and security by design. This involves integrating compliance considerations from the outset of the architectural lifecycle rather than as an afterthought. By engaging with legal and compliance teams early, the architect ensures that the proposed cloud solution adheres to all applicable regulations, such as those governing data residency, access controls, and incident response. This proactive engagement mitigates the risk of costly remediation, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties. It also fosters a culture of compliance and demonstrates due diligence, which are critical ethical and professional obligations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical feasibility without considering regulatory implications fails to uphold professional responsibility. This could lead to the deployment of a solution that, while technically sound, violates data protection laws or security standards, resulting in significant legal and financial repercussions. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings over compliance risks is equally problematic. While cost optimization is a valid business objective, it must never come at the expense of regulatory adherence. Such an approach demonstrates a disregard for legal obligations and ethical duties, potentially exposing the organization to severe penalties and loss of trust. Finally, an approach that defers compliance decisions to a later stage is a recipe for disaster. This reactive stance increases the likelihood of discovering noncompliance issues late in the project, leading to delays, increased costs, and potential project failure, all while demonstrating a lack of foresight and professional accountability. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand the business objectives and technical requirements. Second, identify all applicable regulatory frameworks and their specific mandates relevant to the proposed solution and the data it will handle. Third, engage in cross-functional collaboration, bringing together technical, legal, compliance, and business stakeholders to ensure a holistic understanding of risks and requirements. Fourth, adopt a risk-based methodology to prioritize compliance efforts and architectural controls. Finally, document all decisions and justifications, ensuring transparency and auditability throughout the architectural lifecycle. Question 11. Implementation of a new customer-facing analytics platform on IBM Cloud requires rapid deployment to meet market demand. The proposed solution utilizes a novel data processing service that has not been previously vetted by the organization's security or compliance teams. What is the most responsible architectural decision-making approach? Option A. Deploy the service immediately to capture market opportunity, relying on the vendor's standard security certifications as sufficient assurance for compliance. Option B. Proceed with the deployment after obtaining a waiver from the business unit, with a commitment to retroactively address any identified security or compliance issues. Option C. Implement the service with basic security controls, assuming that the business unit's urgency outweighs the need for a full risk assessment at this stage. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive security and compliance review of the new data processing service, engaging relevant internal stakeholders and external experts if necessary, to ensure alignment with organizational policies and regulatory mandates before proceeding with deployment. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the deployment after obtaining a waiver from the business unit, with a commitment to retroactively address any identified security or compliance issues. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, balancing innovation and rapid deployment with robust security and compliance requirements. The professional architect must navigate the tension between business agility, which often favors quick adoption of new services, and the imperative to ensure that all cloud deployments adhere to established governance frameworks and regulatory mandates. This requires a deep understanding of the organization's risk appetite, the specific compliance obligations, e.g., data privacy, industry-specific regulations, and the capabilities of the proposed cloud services. The challenge lies in making a decision that is not only technically sound, but also ethically responsible and legally compliant, avoiding potential breaches, fines, and reputational damage. The correct approach prioritizes a structured, risk-based decision-making framework that integrates security and compliance from the outset. This involves a thorough assessment of the proposed cloud service against existing policies, regulatory requirements, and the organization's security posture. It emphasizes proactive identification and mitigation of risks before deployment, ensuring that the chosen solution aligns with the organization's overall governance strategy. This aligns with best professional practices by embedding a culture of security and compliance, fostering trust with stakeholders, and demonstrating due diligence. It also directly addresses the ethical obligation to protect sensitive data and the legal requirement to comply with all applicable regulations. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately addresses the security and compliance review process represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This could lead to the deployment of services that are vulnerable to attack, expose sensitive data to unauthorized access, or violate data residency laws. Such actions could result in severe financial penalties, legal liabilities, and irreparable damage to the organization's reputation. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the organization's responsibilities to its customers and stakeholders. From a regulatory standpoint, it constitutes a direct violation of compliance mandates, potentially leading to audits, sanctions, and loss of operating licenses. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Clearly defining the business need and technical requirements. 2. identifying all relevant regulatory and compliance obligations. 3. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment of potential solutions, including security vulnerabilities and compliance gaps. 4. Evaluating the proposed cloud service against these criteria, seeking expert input from security, legal, and compliance teams. 5. Developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies for identified risks. And 6. Establishing ongoing monitoring and auditing processes. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational values and legal obligations. Question 12. The efficiency study reveals that the current on-premises data processing pipeline is experiencing significant performance degradation, impacting critical business operations. As an IBM Cloud professional architect, you are tasked with recommending a strategy for improving this performance, considering the strict regulatory framework of the specified jurisdiction, which mandates robust data protection and privacy controls. Which of the following approaches best balances immediate performance needs with long-term compliance and architectural integrity? Option A. Immediately migrate all data processing workloads to a public IBM Cloud region that offers the lowest cost, without conducting a detailed assessment of data residency requirements or security controls for the specific data types involved. Option B. Develop a new set of cloud-native applications to replace all existing on-premises systems, prioritizing rapid development and deployment without a comprehensive plan for integrating with existing data sources or ensuring compliance with data governance policies. Option C. Implement a hybrid cloud architecture, migrating less sensitive and latency-tolerant workloads to IBM Cloud, while retaining highly regulated or latency-sensitive data and applications on-premises, with a clear roadmap for phased migration of remaining components based on ongoing risk assessments and compliance validation. Option D. Undertake a complete lift-and-shift of all on-premises infrastructure to IBM Cloud, assuming that standard cloud security configurations will meet all regulatory obligations without further review. The correct answer is C. Implement a hybrid cloud architecture, migrating less sensitive and latency-tolerant workloads to IBM Cloud, while retaining highly regulated or latency-sensitive data and applications on-premises, with a clear roadmap for phased migration of remaining components based on ongoing risk assessments and compliance validation. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a significant bottleneck in the on-premises data processing pipeline that is impacting critical business operations. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for improved performance and scalability with the long-term strategic goals of cloud adoption and the associated governance, risk, and compliance (GRC) requirements inherent in a regulated industry. A hasty decision without a structured approach could lead to non-compliance with data residency laws, security vulnerabilities, and increased operational costs. The correct approach involves a phased migration strategy, prioritizing workloads based on their complexity, regulatory impact, and business criticality. This allows for iterative testing and validation of cloud security controls, data governance policies, and performance metrics against established benchmarks and regulatory mandates. This aligns with best practices for cloud architecture, emphasizing a risk-based approach to migration and ensuring that all deployments meet the stringent requirements of the specified jurisdiction, which mandates adherence to data protection regulations and industry-specific compliance standards. An incorrect approach would be to immediately lift and shift all workloads to the cloud without proper assessment. This fails to account for potential data sovereignty issues, where data might be processed or stored in unauthorized geographic locations, violating regulatory mandates. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on cost reduction without a comprehensive security and compliance review. This could lead to the deployment of services that do not meet the required security standards, exposing sensitive data to breaches and resulting in significant regulatory penalties. A third incorrect approach is to implement a cloud-native first strategy for all new developments without considering the integration challenges with existing on-premises systems and the potential for creating new compliance gaps. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the current state, including existing infrastructure, data flows, and regulatory obligations. This is followed by defining clear objectives for the cloud migration, encompassing performance, scalability, security, and compliance. Subsequently, various migration strategies and cloud service models should be evaluated against these objectives and regulatory requirements. A pilot program for a non-critical workload is often advisable to validate the chosen approach before a full-scale migration. Continuous monitoring and adaptation are crucial throughout the process to ensure ongoing compliance and operational efficiency. Question 13. Governance review demonstrates that while the organization is rapidly expanding its cloud footprint to support new business initiatives, the current security architecture has not kept pace with the evolving threat landscape and specific data protection mandates within the U.S. regulatory framework. The architect must propose a strategy to enhance security and ensure compliance without hindering the pace of innovation or incurring prohibitive costs. Option A. Defer significant security upgrades to existing cloud deployments, focusing solely on implementing basic security controls for all new deployments to manage immediate cost pressures, with a plan to address legacy systems only if audit findings necessitate it. Option B. Implement a comprehensive, multi-layered security framework immediately across all new cloud deployments, prioritizing advanced threat detection and data encryption, and then conduct a phased review of existing infrastructure for remediation. Option C. Conduct a detailed risk assessment and compliance gap analysis, prioritizing security enhancements based on the criticality of data, potential impact of breaches, and specific U.S. regulatory requirements. Then implement these enhancements in a phased approach, starting with the highest risk areas. Option D. Focus on optimizing cloud spend by leveraging cost-saving features and services, assuming that the inherent security of the chosen cloud provider's platform will sufficiently mitigate most risks, and address any specific compliance concerns only when explicitly mandated by legal counsel. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive, multi-layered security framework immediately across all new cloud deployments, prioritizing advanced threat detection and data encryption, and then conduct a phased review of existing infrastructure for remediation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture where the desire for rapid innovation and cost optimization clashes with the imperative of maintaining robust security and compliance. The organization is experiencing growth, necessitating scalability, but the existing security posture, while adequate for the past, may not meet the evolving threat landscape or the specific regulatory requirements for handling sensitive data in the cloud. The challenge lies in balancing these competing priorities without compromising either business agility or regulatory adherence. The architect must make a decision that is technically sound, economically viable, and legally compliant within the specified jurisdiction. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of security controls, prioritizing those that directly address the identified risks and regulatory mandates. This demonstrates best professional practice by acknowledging the need for continuous improvement and risk mitigation. It aligns with the principles of security by design and privacy by design, ensuring that security and compliance are integrated into the architecture from the outset, rather than being an afterthought. This approach allows for iterative refinement, enabling the organization to adapt to new threats and regulatory changes without disrupting ongoing operations. It also facilitates a more accurate assessment of resource allocation and budget, ensuring that security investments are targeted effectively. This aligns with the general principles of responsible data handling and risk management expected of professionals in regulated industries. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, one-size-fits-all security solution without a thorough risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. It can lead to overspending on unnecessary controls while leaving critical vulnerabilities unaddressed. This approach fails to demonstrate due diligence and a nuanced understanding of the organization's specific risk profile and regulatory obligations. Prioritizing cost savings above all else, even when it means deferring essential security upgrades, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates a disregard for the potential impact of security breaches on customers, the organization's reputation, and potential legal liabilities. It directly contravenes the principle of protecting sensitive data and maintaining a secure environment, which are often mandated by regulations. Adopting a wait-and-see approach to security, only addressing issues when they become critical or are flagged by auditors, is reactive and professionally irresponsible. This approach exposes the organization to unnecessary risks and can lead to costly remediation efforts after a breach has occurred. It signifies a lack of proactive risk management and a failure to uphold the duty of care expected of a cloud architect. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the business objectives, the regulatory landscape, and the organization's risk appetite. This involves 1. Risk assessment, identifying and prioritizing potential threats and vulnerabilities. 2. Regulatory compliance mapping, understanding specific legal and regulatory requirements applicable to the data and services being deployed. 3. Solution evaluation, assessing various architectural options against identified risks and compliance needs, considering technical feasibility, cost, and operational impact. 4. Phased implementation strategy, developing a roadmap for deploying controls and solutions in a prioritized, iterative manner. 5. Continuous monitoring and improvement, establishing mechanisms for ongoing assessment and adaptation of the architecture. Question 14. Strategic planning requires a proactive approach to integrating new cloud services with existing compliance obligations. When evaluating a novel IBM cloud service that promises significant performance gains for client data processing, what is the most responsible architectural decision-making process to ensure both innovation and regulatory adherence? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of the new service's capabilities against specific client industry regulations and internal compliance policies, involving legal and compliance teams, before any commitment is made. Option B. Prioritize the immediate deployment of the new service to gain a competitive advantage, with plans to address any potential compliance issues retrospectively. Option C. Proceed with the adoption of the new service after a high-level review of vendor documentation, assuming it meets general industry best practices for data security. Option D. Defer the adoption of the new service indefinitely, opting for older, proven technologies to avoid any potential regulatory complexities. Correct answer is C. Proceed with the adoption of the new service after a high-level review of vendor documentation, assuming it meets general industry best practices for data security. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, balancing innovation with established governance and compliance frameworks. The architect must navigate the tension between adopting cutting-edge services for competitive advantage and ensuring adherence to the regulatory landscape governing data handling and security. The professional challenge lies in making a decision that is not only technically sound, but also legally and ethically defensible, especially when dealing with sensitive client data. A failure to consider the regulatory implications could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough understanding and integration of the relevant regulatory framework from the outset. This involves proactive engagement with compliance teams and legal counsel to assess the implications of new technologies. By embedding compliance into the decision-making process, the architect ensures that the chosen solution is not only innovative, but also secure, auditable, and legally sound. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation, which is a cornerstone of professional practice in regulated industries. An incorrect approach that bypasses or underestimates regulatory scrutiny is professionally unacceptable. For instance, adopting a new service without a formal risk assessment or compliance review exposes the organization to significant regulatory noncompliance. This could violate data protection laws, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on the exam's specified jurisdiction, which for C1000-172 is assumed to be U.S.-centric, unless otherwise specified, implying adherence to U.S. federal and state data privacy regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data, or PCI DSS for payment card data, if applicable to the client's industry. Such a failure represents a disregard for legal obligations and ethical responsibilities, potentially leading to severe penalties and legal action. Another incorrect approach might be to rely solely on vendor assurances without independent verification, which is a failure of due diligence and can lead to unforeseen compliance gaps. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This includes identifying all relevant regulatory requirements, evaluating the potential impact of new technologies on compliance, consulting with legal and compliance experts, and documenting all decisions and justifications. The architect should follow a process that mandates a compliance by design methodology, ensuring that regulatory considerations are integral to the architectural design, not an afterthought. This systematic approach mitigates risks and fosters a culture of responsible technology adoption. Question 15. Investigation of the most appropriate IBM cloud migration strategy for a mission-critical financial reporting application, considering its high data sensitivity, stringent regulatory compliance requirements, e.g., SOX, PCI DSS, depending on the specific financial context, and the need for high availability, while also addressing stakeholder pressure for immediate cost reduction. Option A. Focus on migrating the application to the most familiar IBM cloud services based on existing team expertise, even if these services do not fully meet the application's specific performance, security, or compliance mandates, to expedite the migration timeline. Option B. Conduct a detailed assessment of the application's current architecture, performance benchmarks, data residency needs, and security requirements. Map these findings to IBM cloud services that offer robust security, compliance certifications, and high availability features, and propose a phased migration plan with a proof of concept for validation. Option C. Select a migration approach that utilizes readily available, low-cost IBM cloud services that are not specifically certified for financial data or high availability, with the assumption that custom security measures can be implemented post-migration. Option D. Prioritize the migration to the cheapest available IBM cloud compute and storage services to meet the immediate cost reduction targets, deferring any advanced security or high availability configurations until after the initial migration is complete. Correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed assessment of the application's current architecture, performance benchmarks, data residency needs, and security requirements. Map these findings to IBM cloud services that offer robust security, compliance certifications, and high availability features, and propose a phased migration plan with a proof of concept for validation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, where a critical business application needs to be migrated to IBM Cloud. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for cost optimization with the long-term implications of architectural decisions on performance, scalability, and compliance. A hasty decision driven solely by short-term cost savings can lead to significant technical debt, operational inefficiencies, and potential regulatory noncompliance, ultimately costing more in the long run. The architect must navigate competing priorities and stakeholder expectations, ensuring the chosen solution aligns with both business objectives and technical best practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of the application's current state, its business criticality, and future requirements. This includes evaluating performance metrics, identifying dependencies, understanding data sensitivity, and mapping these to IBM cloud services that offer the best fit for functionality, security, and compliance. A phased migration strategy, starting with a pilot or proof of concept, allows for validation of the chosen architecture and services before a full-scale deployment. This approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a robust, scalable, and secure solution that meets current and future business needs, while also considering cost-effectiveness over the solution's lifecycle. It aligns with the principles of responsible cloud adoption, emphasizing due diligence and risk mitigation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Choosing an approach solely based on the lowest immediate cost without a thorough technical and business impact analysis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This can lead to a solution that is not performant, scalable, or secure enough, potentially violating data protection regulations e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on jurisdiction, if sensitive data is mishandled or inadequately protected. It also represents a failure in professional duty to provide a technically sound and sustainable solution. Opting for a solution that uses services with known limitations for the application's specific workload, even if they appear cheaper initially, is also professionally unacceptable. This can result in performance bottlenecks, increased operational overhead for workarounds, and a higher total cost of ownership due to the need for future re-architecture. This approach neglects the architect's responsibility to ensure the solution's long-term viability and efficiency. Selecting a migration path that bypasses essential security and compliance controls to accelerate deployment is a direct violation of regulatory requirements and ethical obligations. This could expose the organization to data breaches, fines, and reputational damage, failing to uphold the trust placed in the architect to protect the organization's assets and data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of business objectives and constraints. This involves stakeholder engagement to gather requirements, followed by a thorough technical assessment of the existing application and potential IBM cloud services. A risk assessment should be conducted for each potential solution, considering performance, security, compliance, and cost implications. A phased approach, including proof of concepts and pilot migrations, is crucial for validating assumptions and mitigating risks. The final decision should be based on a holistic evaluation of value, balancing short-term costs with long-term benefits, operational efficiency, and adherence to all relevant regulatory and ethical standards. Question 16. What factors determine the optimal balance between rapid deployment of new applications on IBM Cloud and the adherence to stringent data privacy regulations and internal security policies when designing a new microservices architecture? Option A. The thoroughness of the risk assessment, the integration of security and compliance controls throughout the development lifecycle, and the selection of appropriate IBM cloud services that offer built-in compliance features. Option B. The extent to which the architecture minimizes the number of IBM cloud services used, the simplicity of the deployment process, and the immediate feedback from end users on application performance. Option C. The personal experience of the lead architect with similar deployments, the popularity of specific open-source technologies, and the ability to quickly provision infrastructure. Option D. The perceived urgency of the business requirement, the availability of development resources, and the cost-effectiveness of the chosen IBM cloud services. Correct answer is A. The thoroughness of the risk assessment, the integration of security and compliance controls throughout the development lifecycle, and the selection of appropriate IBM cloud services that offer built-in compliance features. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge for cloud architects, balancing the need for rapid innovation and deployment with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in making a decision that optimizes for business agility without compromising data integrity, regulatory adherence, or the organization's reputation. This requires a nuanced understanding of the IBM Cloud Platform's capabilities, the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization, and the potential risks associated with different architectural choices. Careful judgment is required to avoid over-engineering solutions that stifle progress or under-engineering them, leading to vulnerabilities. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment and a phased implementation strategy, integrating security and compliance from the outset. This aligns with best practices in cloud architecture and regulatory frameworks that emphasize a proactive, risk-based approach to data protection and system integrity. By involving relevant stakeholders and leveraging IBM Cloud's native security and compliance tools, the architect ensures that the solution is not only functional but also secure and compliant. This represents best professional practice because it demonstrates due diligence, adherence to the principle of security by design, and a commitment to responsible cloud adoption. It also mitigates potential legal and financial repercussions stemming from non-compliance. An incorrect approach that solely focuses on speed of deployment, without adequate security and compliance considerations, would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to breaches of data privacy regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable, or specific U.S. federal/state regulations depending on the data type and location, resulting in substantial fines, legal action, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes overly restrictive security measures without considering business needs could lead to inefficiency and hinder innovation, potentially violating the organization's strategic objectives and leading to missed market opportunities. This could also be seen as a failure in professional responsibility to deliver a balanced and effective solution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the business objectives. Clearly define what the business aims to achieve with the cloud solution. 2. Identify regulatory and compliance requirements. Determine all applicable laws, industry standards, and internal policies. 3. Assess risks. Evaluate potential security, operational, and compliance risks associated with different architectural choices. 4. Evaluate IBM cloud services. Understand the capabilities and limitations of relevant IBM cloud services in addressing security, compliance, and performance needs. 5. Develop architectural options. Propose multiple architectural designs, each with its own trade-offs. 6. Conduct trade-off analysis. Systematically compare the options against business objectives, risks, and requirements. 7. Stakeholder consultation. Engage with legal, compliance, security, and business teams to gather input and ensure alignment. 8. Select and justify the best approach. Choose the option that best balances all factors and clearly articulate the rationale. 9. Implement and monitor. Deploy the solution in a phased manner and establish continuous monitoring for security and compliance. Question 17. When evaluating the deployment of a new customer-facing analytics service on IBM Cloud to meet an urgent business need, what is the most critical factor to consider regarding data residency and compliance with relevant regulations? Option A. Ensuring the chosen IBM Cloud service explicitly guarantees data will be stored and processed within the specified geographic regions mandated by applicable data protection laws. Option B. Relying solely on the marketing materials of the IBM Cloud service to confirm its compliance with data residency regulations. Option C. Prioritizing the fastest deployment option available to meet the immediate business demand, with a plan to address compliance later. Option D. Assuming that any globally available IBM Cloud service will automatically comply with all regional data residency requirements. The correct answer is A. Ensuring the chosen IBM Cloud service explicitly guarantees data will be stored and processed within the specified geographic regions mandated by applicable data protection laws. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for IBM Cloud professional architects, balancing the immediate need for a new service with the long-term implications of architectural decisions, particularly concerning data residency and compliance. The architect must navigate the complexities of a rapidly evolving business requirement against a backdrop of strict regulatory frameworks governing data handling. The challenge lies in making a decision that is not only technically sound, but also legally compliant and ethically responsible, ensuring the organization avoids potential penalties and reputational damage. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough understanding and adherence to the relevant regulatory framework, specifically focusing on data residency requirements. This involves proactively identifying and assessing cloud service offerings that demonstrably meet these stringent criteria. By engaging with legal and compliance teams early, the architect ensures that the chosen solution aligns with all applicable laws and guidelines, thereby mitigating risks. This proactive, compliance-first strategy represents best professional practice because it embeds regulatory adherence into the core of the architectural decision-making process, safeguarding the organization's interests and upholding its legal obligations. An incorrect approach that overlooks or downplays the data residency requirements, perhaps by prioritizing speed of deployment or cost savings without due diligence, would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach could lead to noncompliance with data protection laws, resulting in substantial fines, legal action, and severe damage to the organization's reputation. Another incorrect approach might be to assume that a globally available service inherently meets specific regional data residency needs without explicit verification, which is a failure of due diligence and a disregard for the nuances of regulatory compliance. Relying solely on vendor assurances without independent verification or contractual guarantees also constitutes a failure to exercise professional judgment and a potential breach of regulatory obligations. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a clear definition of business requirements, followed by a comprehensive assessment of all constraints, including regulatory, technical, and financial. This framework should incorporate a risk assessment phase, where potential compliance gaps and their consequences are identified. The decision-making process should involve cross-functional collaboration, particularly with legal, compliance, and security teams, to ensure all perspectives are considered. Finally, the chosen solution should be documented with clear justifications, demonstrating how it meets all identified requirements and mitigates identified risks. Question 18. Market research demonstrates that a U.S.-based financial services firm is planning to migrate a critical customer-facing trading application to IBM Cloud. The firm operates under strict U.S. financial regulations, including those pertaining to data privacy, transaction integrity, and auditability. The architecture team is tasked with designing the IBM Cloud solution, which approach best ensures compliance with the relevant U.S. financial regulatory framework while enabling the migration. Option A. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that specifically identifies all applicable U.S. financial regulations and translates them into detailed technical and operational requirements for the IBM Cloud environment, ensuring data residency, security, and auditability are addressed. Option B. Replicate the existing on-premises security controls and network configurations within the IBM Cloud environment, as these have historically met compliance standards for the firm. Option C. Prioritize the adoption of the newest and most advanced IBM Cloud services to enhance application performance, with a secondary consideration for regulatory compliance after the initial deployment. Option D. Design the IBM Cloud architecture to maximize cost savings by utilizing the most cost-effective IBM Cloud services, assuming that standard IBM Cloud security features will inherently meet regulatory needs. The correct answer is D. Design the IBM Cloud architecture to maximize cost savings by utilizing the most cost-effective IBM Cloud services, assuming that standard IBM Cloud security features will inherently meet regulatory needs. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture, where a critical business application needs to be migrated to IBM Cloud. The primary challenge lies in ensuring that the migration process and the resulting cloud architecture comply with the specific regulatory framework governing financial services in the United States, as mandated by the C1000-172 exams jurisdiction. This involves understanding the nuances of data residency, security controls, auditability, and disaster recovery requirements as stipulated by U.S. financial regulations. Failure to address these can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and operational disruption. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that specifically identifies and addresses the regulatory requirements of U.S. financial services. This means engaging with legal and compliance teams early to understand applicable regulation, such as those from the SEC, FINRA, and potentially state-specific financial regulations. The assessment must then translate these regulatory mandates into technical requirements for the IBM Cloud architecture, covering aspects like data encryption at rest and in transit, access controls, logging and monitoring for audit trails, and robust business continuity and disaster recovery plans that meet or exceed regulatory expectations. This proactive, compliance-first methodology ensures that the architecture is not only technically sound, but also legally defensible and operationally resilient within the U.S. financial regulatory landscape. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes only cost optimization without a thorough regulatory impact assessment is professionally unacceptable. This is because U.S. financial regulations often impose strict requirements on data handling and security that can influence cost considerations, e.g., specific encryption standards, redundant infrastructure for DR. Ignoring these can lead to non-compliance, necessitating costly remediation later. An approach that focuses solely on leveraging the latest IBM Cloud services without verifying their compliance with U.S. financial regulations is also professionally flawed. While innovation is important, regulatory adherence is paramount in this sector. Certain cutting-edge services might not yet have the necessary certifications or controls to meet stringent financial industry compliance standards, leading to a violation of regulations. An approach that assumes existing on-premises security controls are sufficient for the cloud without a specific impact assessment against U.S. financial regulations is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Cloud environments have different security paradigms, and regulatory bodies expect specific cloud-native controls and configurations to be implemented and validated. Relying on outdated assumptions can result in security gaps and non-compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this domain must adopt a risk-based, compliance-driven decision-making process. This involves 1. Regulatory identification. proactively identifying all applicable U.S. financial regulations relevant to the application and data being migrated. 2. Impact analysis, conducting a detailed assessment of how these regulations translate into technical and operational requirements for the IBM cloud environment. 3. Solution design, architecting the IBM cloud solution to meet these identified requirements, prioritizing security, data integrity, and auditability. 4. Validation and testing, rigorously testing the implemented controls and processes to ensure compliance. 5. Continuous monitoring, establishing ongoing monitoring and review mechanisms to adapt to evolving regulations and threats. This structured approach ensures that business objectives are met while upholding the highest standards of regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility. Question 19. System analysis indicates that a critical financial services application processing sensitive customer financial data is slated for migration to IBM Cloud. The organization operates under strict financial regulatory frameworks that mandate specific data residency, encryption, and audit trail requirements. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance and minimizes risk during this migration? Option A. Rely exclusively on generic IBM Cloud compliance documentation and vendor-provided impact assessment templates without a specific analysis of the application's unique data processing activities and regulatory context. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously maps the application's data flows, identifies all sensitive data elements, and evaluates their alignment with IBM Cloud's compliance offerings and the organization's specific regulatory obligations, including data residency, encryption, and audit trail requirements, before proceeding with migration. Option C. Prioritize the technical migration plan and performance optimization, deferring detailed regulatory compliance checks to post-migration, assuming IBM Cloud's general compliance certifications will suffice. Option D. Assume that the application's existing on-premises security controls, if robust, will automatically translate to equivalent protection in the IBM Cloud environment, without a dedicated assessment of cloud-specific security configurations and regulatory adherence. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously maps the application's data flows, identifies all sensitive data elements, and evaluates their alignment with IBM Cloud's compliance offerings and the organization's specific regulatory obligations, including data residency, encryption, and audit trail requirements, before proceeding with migration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud architecture where a critical business application needs to be migrated to IBM Cloud. The primary challenge lies in ensuring that the migration process adheres to all relevant regulatory requirements and industry best practices for data protection and privacy, without compromising the application's functionality or performance. The architect must balance technical feasibility with legal and ethical obligations, particularly concerning sensitive data. The need for a comprehensive impact assessment before migration is paramount to identify potential risks and ensure compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves conducting a thorough impact assessment that specifically addresses data privacy and security regulations applicable to the organization's operating jurisdiction. This assessment should meticulously identify all data types processed by the application, classify their sensitivity, and map them to relevant regulatory controls, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, depending on the jurisdiction. It should also evaluate the application's architecture against IBM Cloud security features and compliance certifications to ensure alignment. This proactive, risk-based methodology is best professional practice because it directly mitigates potential regulatory violations, data breaches, and associated penalties. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible data stewardship, aligning with ethical principles of protecting user information and maintaining trust. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize only the technical migration plan and performance metrics, deferring regulatory considerations to a later stage. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it risks deploying an application that is non-compliant from the outset. Such a failure could lead to severe legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. It violates the principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are fundamental to modern data protection frameworks. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that IBM Cloud's general compliance certifications automatically cover all specific regulatory needs of the application, without a detailed, application-specific assessment. While IBM Cloud offers robust compliance assurances, the responsibility for ensuring that specific data processing activities within an application meet all applicable regulations ultimately rests with the organization. This approach is an ethical and regulatory failure, as it abdicates responsibility for due diligence and could lead to overlooking critical compliance gaps unique to the application's data handling practices. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on vendor-provided templates for impact assessments without tailoring them to the specific context of the application and its data. Vendor templates can be a starting point, but they often lack the granularity required to address the unique data flows, processing activities, and regulatory obligations of a particular system. This can result in an incomplete assessment, missing critical risks and compliance requirements, which is a failure in professional judgment and due diligence. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, compliance-first mindset. The decision-making process should begin with a clear understanding of the regulatory landscape relevant to the data being processed. This involves identifying all applicable laws and guidelines. Subsequently, a detailed inventory and classification of data are essential. The impact assessment should then systematically evaluate how the proposed cloud solution, IBM Cloud, will handle this data, identifying potential risks to confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and mapping these risks to specific regulatory controls. This iterative process of identification, evaluation, and mitigation ensures that technical solutions are built upon a foundation of compliance and ethical data handling. Question 20. Operational review demonstrates that a financial services organization is planning to migrate sensitive customer transaction data to a new IBM Cloud solution to enhance analytics capabilities. The project timeline is aggressive, with business units pushing for rapid deployment. The architect is tasked with ensuring the solution meets all regulatory requirements, particularly concerning data localization and privacy. Which approach best addresses the potential impact of this migration on regulatory compliance? Option A. Delegate the entire responsibility for regulatory compliance to the IBM Cloud vendor, assuming they will proactively manage all aspects of data localization and privacy for the organization's specific use case. Option B. Conduct a detailed data residency and privacy impact assessment, mapping all sensitive data flows, identifying specific IBM Cloud services and regions that comply with applicable financial regulations and data protection laws, and documenting any necessary configurations or contractual clauses to ensure compliance. Option C. Proceed with the migration using IBM Cloud standard offerings, assuming the vendor's global infrastructure inherently meets all necessary data residency and privacy regulations for the target markets. Option D. Prioritize the aggressive deployment timeline by migrating the data first and addressing regulatory compliance concerns in a post-migration review, relying on the organization's existing internal compliance team to identify and rectify any issues. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the migration using IBM Cloud standard offerings, assuming the vendor's global infrastructure inherently meets all necessary data residency and privacy regulations for the target markets. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid cloud adoption and the need for thorough impact assessment, particularly concerning data residency and compliance. The architect must balance business agility with regulatory obligations, ensuring that the chosen cloud services and configurations do not inadvertently violate data protection laws. The complexity arises from the distributed nature of cloud services, the potential for data to traverse geographical boundaries, and the evolving regulatory landscape. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive and comprehensive impact assessment before deployment. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by regulations like GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, and similar frameworks that emphasize understanding and mitigating risks associated with personal data processing. A thorough assessment ensures that all relevant data types, their intended processing, and the chosen cloud infrastructure's capabilities are understood in the context of applicable laws. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of non-compliance, reputational damage, and potential fines. It also fosters trust with stakeholders by demonstrating a commitment to responsible data handling. An incorrect approach that overlooks the impact assessment on data residency and compliance would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Specifically, it would violate the principle of accountability, which requires organizations to demonstrate compliance with data protection laws. Failing to assess data residency could lead to the unauthorized transfer of personal data to jurisdictions with inadequate data protection standards, contravening cross-border data transfer restrictions. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for individuals' privacy rights by not adequately safeguarding their data. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on vendor assurances without independent verification, would fail to meet the due diligence obligations expected of a professional architect. This could lead to a false sense of security and expose the organization to unforeseen risks. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to risk management and compliance. This includes 1. Identifying all applicable regulations and legal frameworks relevant to the data being processed and the intended cloud deployment. 2. Conducting a comprehensive data inventory and mapping data flows to understand where data resides and how it is processed. 3. Performing a detailed impact assessment, specifically evaluating the cloud provider's data residency options, security controls, and compliance certifications against regulatory requirements. 4. Documenting all findings, decisions, and mitigation strategies. 5. Obtaining necessary approvals and ensuring ongoing monitoring and review of the cloud environment.